2020 marked the release of games such as Final Fantasy VII Remake, Demon's Souls Remake, Tony Hawk Pro Skater, and Mafia Definitive Edition. Games that all originally released between 11 and 23 years ago, and it got us thinking about how it all started. In this episode, we explore all the games, compare them to their newer counterparts, and see what the differences and improvements are. Just take a look at any remake or rebooted game and you can see the vast improvement on graphics. We have Spyro making the jump to Unreal Engine 4. You can see the emotions on Spyro's face, the environments look alive. You can actually see the grass now. Look at those textures. Spyro's flame actually burns things. There's so much more detail in Spyro and NPC models. Look at Moneybags. He looks even more smug now as he robs you blind. In the Final Fantasy VII Remake, Barrett's gun has gone from a block to an actual gun. You can even see the material in your weapons. Pre-rendered backgrounds are gone and the casts look a lot more lifelike. We even get small details like sparks as Cloud's sword and Barrett's bullets hit enemies. And let's not forget Sephiroth's glow up. No, not that one. The one we meet in Kingdom Hearts on the PS2, which gave us a glimpse into the graphical improvements we'd see in each console generation. Resident Evil 2 and 3 rebuilt the games from the ground up and brought back Mr. X and Nemesis to terrify players and make us waste our resources on these absolute units. These games getting a new lick of paint really increased the fear factor. Deaths looked more realistic and these big boys seemed a lot more scary. Seeing these remakes is truly a sight to behold as devs can fully realize their original vision and we can play some of our childhood favorites without having to dust off the old PS1 or N64. I think it's safe to say graphics are a definite improvement. The originals don't come close. The core story of Pokemon remains mainly the same for the first two generations, then breaks the mold of Generation 3, giving you a father figure with a job. Progress. Then you're back to being fatherless for every other generation. But it's not all doom and gloom. From Gen 6 onwards, your mum permanently moves out of the kitchen and gets her own room. Progress again. You set out on a journey to complete your Pokedex, defeat the criminal organization, beat up some kids and take their lunch money, best 8 gym leaders, and become the Pokemon champion. All these years later, not much has changed in regards to the story. To be fair, there is usually an overarching story. For example, in Gen 3 it was about climate change, and then Gen 5 it was about Pokemon rights. But for the most part, your goal is always the same. But this isn't a bad thing, as in this case, it's the gameplay that drives the story forward. Has anyone really cared about saving Peach, or do you just want to use Mario's new power-ups? God of War, on the other hand, was rebooted and took the franchise in a completely different direction. It went from a mindless, fast-paced hack and slash where you could square triangle your way to victory, unless you're on the hard difficulties, to a more slower, methodical game where you had to think more and adapt to your enemies. The story went from a man hell-bent on revenge and destruction to a man who was now accountable for his actions and wanted to nurture his relationship with his son. If you asked me 10 years ago if I thought Kratos was capable of this emotional range, I'd have to kick you into Hades like the boat captain for asking such a stupid question. In this case, a fresh look on an old story really brought God of War to life and improved upon an already great story. In terms of differences between old and new games, there is no difference. A good story is a good story. But when it comes to story, it's not enough to compare an old iteration of a game with a new one. Games are now a medium to tell stories in an immersive way, so it's no wonder their market value is bigger than the music and film industry. It's this immersion that makes it a great teaching tool. Take Hellblade for example. The narrative serves as a metaphor for psychosis. The trials you face and the demons you fight leave the player wondering if any of this is even real. Celeste deals with anxiety, and the mountain you have to climb acts as a metaphor for said anxiety. And Before I Forget is a story where you live the life of a woman suffering from dementia, and the game can be frustrating at times, but not because of bad game design, but because you want to help the protagonist. But the game puts you in situations where you just can't. You have to watch her fail, or you feel this frustration because you empathize with the protagonist. Just like the evolution we see Kratos undergo in God of War, gaming has experienced this too. Playing games takes us on an adventure, but it's no longer a generic adventure. It's more realistic and better mirrors the emotions and struggles we undergo in our lives. Stories just have more meaning now. Wikipedia defines gameplay as the way players interact with a certain video or computer game. It is further categorized as the way the game is played, including the rules, the plot, the objectives, and how to conquer them, as well as the player's overall experience. Which I think is just a long way of saying, is it fun, and do I want to keep playing? And to test this, we got the lads from Orthors to play a couple of games of Tekken 1, which released in 1994, and Tekken 7, which released 21 years later. And we'll see if 1 is just as fun as 7. Do you guys want time, or do you want it to be like
no need for time, I'll finish them before.
Oh, big pull.
Whoa!
He's wearing jeans as well. He's wearing jeans. He's wearing Nikes and ripped jeans.
A man's got the show on, the Adidas show night.
Come on, bro.
I don't think you can do any of that.
That would have made up so much, you know. That would have made up so much ground.
Imagine getting kicked in the jaw like that.
Come on, Kazuya, man. Don't let me down.
My money's on Kazuya.
You're up full.
Oh my god, Max has got it.
Oh, which one's Max? No top.
No, Max is the one that won.
No top. No top.
It was the outfit.
It was the outfit.
The
You can't win in
jeans. The
jeans.
jeans and those Vans.
You can't win in jeans. It's not right.
You know, you should mix it.
Okay. That was not nice.
Pirouettes.
That was not nice.
Hey, Max, that's your
Nah, that's not nice, man.
Oh, did you still do the move when he gets bare dizzy? Spins out.
I don't even know.
Guys, you can grab it this game, you know. Huh?
You can grab it this
Why
game.
would you?
Oh, sorry. Do you know what? No, you're gonna find out, Max. Try and grab. The distance is crazy far. Like a mini
You got Michelle? Oh, shit. Alright, you do a girl thing then.
But how'd you block even? Again?
Back, same as.
Back. Oh! Wait, what's block even? Back.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
in the jeans. Don't have it, don't you?
The ripped jeans.
Man's got the tiger head, fam.
You didn't put on a tie to get beat up.
Roman road shoes.
You know what I mean, bro? Come on.
This is Croatian tiger.
King's hands are wow.
Oh, don't let him perfect Daniel. Oh.
I wanted that. I was being a
Man wanted the perfect. You're trying to embarrass man. Never that, fam.
Come on, Daniel.
Go on.
Yeah.
Oh,
No.
with the jump, bro.
No respect.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
No, never me, bro. Never me. You're crazy.
Yes, Daniel.
Not having it.
Witness the strength.
Come on,
Come on,
Michelle.
Daniel.
Not having it.
Come on, Daniel.
Michelle's my girl, fam. Michelle's my girl.
Michelle, man.
Come on. Bam.
I wanted her to be my darling.
What's going on?
You my darling.
Come on, Michelle.
Bro, I'm just gonna have to stay down here, bro.
Yeah.
Oh. Ooh, look at that. I do. What? Who's got?
I got the bare foot with the
No,
I've got a tag on.
Yeah, you're a tag,
I gotta
bro.
get home quick. Hold on. Let's go.
Can you
I see a perfect coming. Oh my god, that front row was bad.
Best slow.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, he's going to get a perfect.
Yeah, I can feel it.
Oh, wait.
That is so painful. That's more painful than mimics, man.
I'd rather come
Someone get
forth than
one
get perfect.
perfect.
I can't lie. I hear that, man.
Right. That one apiece.
Yeah.
One apiece.
Yeah, I hear that. I don't trust him either.
You got this.
Come on. I
You got
can't.
this.
This is
Come
Win the
on,
circle,
come on.
fam. Win the circle.
The winning circle.
Come on, jump.
That's it, bro.
Oh no, it's not
Start
looking
it.
good. Whoa.
Started.
Oh my, no, it's perfect. It's becoming the perfect in stage.
no.
But, come on, fam. My God.
Wait, Taylor, did you come second?
Silent.
Yes, he did.
Well done, Yasin.
He came seconds.
Yeah. Well, he's gonna walk me and take a 7. Like, yeah. Yeah.
Yasin, when did you have the lead?
I got a bit of time.
Not before Tekken 7.
Tekken 1 proved to be a lot of fun, but will Tekken 7 compare? Of course it will. It's Tekken 7. Play the clips.
I'm not good at fighting
Let's
games.
start there.
Hey, Daniel's doing the nose. Daniel! He's actually down. Oh my gosh.
I'm not good at fighting games.
Let's start there.
Taylor came in the coaching. Oh, what? Have you started? Yeah. Oh, Daniel, you're a pagan. Daniel's a pagan. Daniel's a pagan.
Oh shit. Whip Punisher.
No way.
I'm not good at fighting games.
Let's start there.
I want to see any of that.
It's hard to watch, man. It's hard to watch, honestly.
Nah. Can't be perfect. Can't be perfect.
Not yet.
That rage.
Maybe not.
Get there.
Okay.
On your head top.
Yes. No, yeah.
No way! He did a mad contract!
First to four.
Unlucky, man.
The rankings have changed.
No. You gotta be humble, you know, when you come to the top. You gotta settle, you got, yeah, man. Ronaldo and Messi come through, you know, it was like at the top.
That was decent. I remember that.
Bloody hell.
Oh, hey!
This is school. Rubbing his head. You're lemon in your hair like that.
Come on, Daniel. I think Taylor started changing them angles, boy. Man, shifting angles.
That was over pretty quick. Come on, for the man then.
He's wasting so much energy.
Yeah. All of that, Daniel. Yeah. Oh, Daniel.
American hero. Can't stand that.
Daniel, you need to get a bit of space on you. Yeah. So you can start.
Got knee pad. Don't lose my man with knee pad.
It's a triangle, Daniel.
It's a triangle, go. School? Hello?
Yeah, go keep.
You know what? Sorry, man.
Yes. Got the rhythm. Got the rhythm.
Come on, go on.
Got the rhythm.
He's giving you this loud, man.
He's giving him this love. Look at this.
Daniel, you know what you're doing now. Daniel, you know what you're doing.
Don't put the pressure on yourself,
Go on, Daniel.
It's finished.
Go on, Daniel. Come on, Daniel. Come on, Daniel.
Oh, come on, you niggas will get first, man.
Daniel.
Finished.
It was your coat, man. It was the leopard print.
It was like fit time.
Why did you wear leopard print?
I think it's safe to say that both iterations of Tekken are a lot of fun, thus passing our very basic test for good gameplay. So if you're alright with a few less pixels on screen, dust off the old PS1, N64 or any other old console you might have, because some of these games such as Spyro, Pokemon, Tenchu and Metal Gear Solid still hold up really well to this day. Back in the dark ages, there were no patches. When you bought a console game, you got what you got. But this led to some fun exploits. In Pokemon, we had Missing No, who completely changed the game. You could duplicate items, you could have your Pokemon go beyond level 100, you could do a lot of crazy stuff in the game. In Ocarina of Time, you can warp to the final boss, a strat speedrunners use. And in God of War, you can skip a tutorial level to get infinite magic for the rest of the game before New Game Plus, which makes the game considerably easier. Now, we get day one patches, and if it turns out there are any issues, they can be fixed. For example, when Steve was released for Smash Ultimate, the guy was happy as can be in his victory animation. Then, they patched out his meat. But I'd say the benefits outweigh the drawbacks, especially in fighting games. New characters can be released and the game can be patched to keep it balanced, which is very useful. Pre-patch Leroy was pretty broken in Tekken 7. We can get good DLC for games, however, not all DLC was created equally, but some are worth it, like The Witcher, which provides hours of new content, and the Frozen Wilds DLC from Horizon Zero Dawn. This continued support from developers is very much appreciated and can fix game-breaking bugs and enrich the player's experience. And then we have Cyberpunk, which is honestly not a bad game. It's really good actually. It just needs to go back into the oven for an extra year.
First game I ever played, well funny enough I played it here, is Spyro.
That was the one that got me captured, man. It was pretty easy. Yeah, man. It's just easy to catch on, especially when you're a little kid. Sometimes you just don't want to get challenged too much. In some holidays, you just want to chill and just zone for a game. So yeah, definitely my game was Spyro 1.
The first game I played was Streets of Rage. Back in the day at my nan's house with my cousins. I got booted off though because I was rubbish, but that was the first one, Streets of Rage.
First game I ever played was probably Super Mario 64 or Lilac Wars on the N64, which my dad had all the high scores for, which was really annoying as a kid. But I've made sure I've cleared them off now as an adult, so don't worry about that.
The first game I've ever played was Psychic Force. I don't think anyone's heard it, but it's kind of like a cat of Avatar, where the characters have got like elemental powers. So there's fire, there's a character of wind, there's a character of like thunder, and yeah, it was pretty cool, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's pretty unknown as well.
Remakes are good because it gives people an opportunity to play a game that they never had a chance to. I think for me, PS1 was definitely my first console when my brother let me play, but my older brother let me play. But again, yeah, when they remake games, I think it definitely does open the doors for people to get back on it.
Nostalgia at the end of the day as well, like Zelda's, like Max loves Zelda to death, so he'll play Zelda every time there's a new one that comes out or a remake. So yeah, I'm definitely for that.
Like when Max says his dad was just smashing that game, high scores in the game. Do you know what I mean? Like they remake them now, you can just be like, Dad, let me sit you down now. Let me sit you down and whoop you on this. So I am for it. If I'm honest, for me, I'm for it.
The developers have to then decide if they're remaking the game for the original fans or if they're building it for the new fans. So Crash Bandicoot, for example, when they made the remake of that, the jumping was exactly the same as PlayStation 1. Like the floating, inaccurate, like, oh, it's horrible to play that remake, honestly. Although it looks beautiful, I was running along that bridge with the holes, and there's some kind of ram up there. I can't even remember what's going on. Yeah, no, it's just there. Personally, if I would have remade Crash Bandicoot, I would have fixed the jumping and the movement, and then had it looking like feeling like a new game, looking like a new game, but still having the same story and the same moves that you remember from the original.
I'll use Shadow Colossus for an example. I mean, extending the gameplay, I would say, is, if they're going to remake it, is something that they should prioritize, really. So like with Shadow of Colossus now, they've added a lot more free roaming, in terms of like actually taking down the beasts and stuff like that. They've kind of made it slightly more I'd say parkour. Like it's a lot easier to climb up the beast than before, and kind of hard as well, because when they start shaking, it's like it's peak for you, and also when you drop off, it's like game over. But yeah, overall, as long as they keep the nostalgia for the older fans, and by adding the new features, hopefully newer fans can get on the wave and start playing that game that they're remaking. And yeah, it's all good for me in my opinion.
In terms of that, yeah, a bit like what Daniel said, it depends on the title. Like God of War, do you know what I mean? Originally, the aesthetic of the game was banging. Like playing that on the PS2, bro, that was mad. I remember that. And when they released it on the PS4, it still kind of had the characteristics of how it was in the first game. So it still kind of worked. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think it depends on the title of the game or what they're doing, whether they change the characteristics of how it moves, or they just keep it the same and then they just revamp the graphics on it. Because for me, yeah, God of War, that game works, man.
Your cold body from every corner of every realm, and feed your soul to the vilest filth in hell. That is my promise.
He saved your life.
He robbed me of everything.
I think the gameplay, if you're making a remake, I think the gameplay should change if you can make it good. Like just going on watching interviews of how they made the new God of War, like it wasn't like the gameplay is not the same as God of War 3. Like it's more like you can double jump and stuff and keep pressing X to do your move. But it's like that on the new one as well, but they've added new mechanics like the axe. They've put lots of work into how you throw the axe and how they've tested it various times, and people just love throwing the axe. So just concentrating on new mechanics and thoroughly testing it with new users. I think you can change the gameplay of a game through thorough testing and just making sure that your audience is happy with the outcome. I think, yeah, if it's done properly, you can change the game. Keep some elements the same, but you can change the game, and it will still be enjoyable for old consumers and new consumers.
I think the best place for remakes is probably revamping characters that were maybe forgotten. And I think Smash Brothers, they throw in all kinds of characters that a lot of us don't even know about. Ice Climbers, for example. Unless you're like 30 years old, you might not even know who they are unless you play Smash. And so I think bringing back an old Ice Climbers game that they had when it was 2D and pixelated is probably, I think that would do quite well. And I think maybe revamping old games should be used on games that were forgotten and ones that people are not so aware of. I think that's probably the best place to do it.
I think remakes, is a bit of a 50-50. It depends, I think, maybe how they're doing it. If they're doing it to, like you said, maybe like polish an old turd just for the sake of it, then yeah, maybe you're not pushing it forward. But if they're using it in a sense to understand what they can do to make things better, if they've got another project that they want to work on, then maybe it can help the industry go forward that way. And like you said, with remakes, you're bringing in other people to work on it that can potentially make themselves better using a revamp or a remake of a game. So personally, I think it's a 50-50. It depends on which context they're using it. If they're just using it, like you said, to put microtransaction in, then it's not really worth it, you know what I mean? It's just being a bit lazy, cheating to a degree. But if you're using it, if you know the company's using it to better themselves and maybe the people in the company, then yeah, I think it's worth it personally.
I think it really depends on the remake. For example, when developers make HD versions of a game, I don't know how long that takes. If it doesn't take them too long, then I don't see a problem with it. Just literally grabbing the game and re-releasing it in HD. I don't have a problem with that. It's just a matter of how long and how much effort they actually have to put into, re-releasing that. But then when I look at a game like Link's Awakening, it feels like a completely different game. If you go back further enough and then re-release it, then you're really playing with a completely different, console, new graphics, new gameplay. I think maybe a remake between PS4 and PS3 it's too close. It's so unnecessary. And like even PS4, PS2 is still a little bit too close. When you go back further to N64, PlayStation 1, before Xbox, Super Nintendo, all of that, that's when the remakes are actually quite exciting. You're like, oh wow, this feels new, fresh. Even if it is, like Yasin said, a polished turd, it feels like a different game, It's like, so, yes, I understand why people are disappointed sometimes, but do you know what? It makes room for us because we're hoping to make original games. So if people are not happy with remakes, that works out for us, innit? So, you know what I'm saying? So, yeah, that's good.
I feel like people like ourselves and the new generation coming up and making games, I feel like our ideas when remastering will be like much different to like what the industry has now. For example, like I've always been speaking to the boys here, like if they were to remake a Jak and Daxter, why does it have to be a remake in the same graphics? Why can't it be remade with new graphics? Why couldn't it be Jak in like an Assassin's Creed style? What's stopping people from doing that? Like you could, that old world of Jak and Daxter, if you renew that and revamp that and have that in a style of like Assassin's Creed, what's that going to look like? If you give them a double jump, what's that going to look like? If they have the same, not the same mechanisms, but if they use kind of the same mechanisms like that they had in the old game and just kind of buffer them and change them to like now's generation, what's that going to look like? Because we haven't seen like a fake game, like not fake, but yeah, a fake game like Jak and Daxter where you could double jump. And how would that be interpreted in like the new systems, the new Unreal Engine and stuff like that? Like I think that's something that we haven't seen, and that would be cool. Like a lot of games now are realistic, and it's like you can't do a double jump, or there's not stuff that's like, that's fake. But that's what made games enjoyable back in the day, like just having something that's fake, like playing a football game where they're running really fast, but then they change it, they update it, and then it's a football game where it's really realistic, but it's slow and it's real. It's just like, yeah, it's real and it's nice, but I was enjoying it when I could just pace through or something like that. Sometimes you like the unrealistic aspects of a game, and I think when you remake a game for new people like ourselves coming into the industry, new ideas and everything, I reckon you'll see a bigger change when it comes to remakes, and I think that will bring more excitement to it as well.
Thank you for watching this episode of Streamcast Explores. Like, share and subscribe for more content, and feel free to leave a comment as we love reading them.